Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. I am excited today because I love music, not just any kind of music, but jazz. Now, when we talk about jazz, we talk about a whole bunch of different instruments, from the keyboards to the bass guitar, electric guitar, you name it, it's out there. But the one instrument in particular that is noted for its jazz is the saxophone. And we have in studio the saxophonist herself.
Hi, everybody. Paula Atherton here.
Paula, welcome to the show. This is probably what, 3 takes that we've done already, but at least we got it. We got it right.
Got to do it till you get it right.
You know what? Thanks for coming on the show. Let's get right down before I get into my questions and answers statement. Tell the viewers a little bit about Paula.
Ever since I can remember, I just wanted to be a musician and learn about music. And I didn't know I was going to write, but I started singing in elementary school, and then I got a flute, and later on a saxophone. It almost didn't matter to me what instrument I had. I just wanted to be able to play music and learn about that.
Did you grow up in a household with musicians where music was plentiful to the ear?
No, there actually were no musicians in my family. So I was asking for a piano around when I was 5, and my parents thought I was crazy, or they just couldn't afford it, or they were like, okay, sure, you know. They didn't take me seriously because there was nobody in the family playing music. There were writers. I have a writer in my family, but not music. So
when you say writers, Paula, what kind of writers were they?
You know, it's someone that's in my family that's not like real close to me. So all I know about them is honestly that they are a writer. I think they've written a book. I'm just not sure of any other details. I was just told that one of my relatives is a writer.
So how did music first get introduced to you? You wanted a piano. Where did you even hear the piano to say, hey, mom and dad, I want to get a piano?
Maybe just from watching TV. My mother loved Nat King Cole.
Really?
Yeah, so she used to play his recordings all the time.
Which singer did you like growing up?
You know, I appreciated him. You know, I appreciated him. I love a lot of jazz singers like Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan. You know, all the greats. There's so much to learn from all of them. And I really got into vocalese for a while. Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross. The way they took the Count Basie charts and wrote words to all the horn parts and like sang them, you know. I got into and studied a bunch of that. And of course, I've always loved the classic stuff. You know, Aretha, Stevie Wonder, you know, classic soul stuff. And I like a lot of different kinds of music. As long as it's good. As long as it's good.
That's true. When did the different instruments start to come into play? Like, were you in high school? When did your music skills start to excel? Because you play different instruments. So which one did you start out with, and when did it transfer to the other different instruments?
Well, as I said, in elementary school, I started singing. I was always in chorus. I was first soprano because I could hit all the high notes. And then in 4th grade, you could get an instrument. And I didn't necessarily want a flute, but the band director, as they do many times, try to steer kids into taking a certain instrument.
Right.
I think I thought the drums might be cool to play, and they were like, why don't you play a flute? So I said, okay. I didn't really pick it. You know, I didn't really, music picked me. Like you know, it was in my heart. I had to play music. but I didn't know what instrument it was going to be on or anything like that.
When did you
And then,
determine which one it was going to be?
I'm sorry.
When did you determine which instrument it was going to be for you?
Well, in fourth grade when I wound up getting the flute, I just did everything I could do with it. I'd listen to recordings and try to play along, which is something that I of course I could do now because I improvise. I play jazz.
Mhm.
But when you're first learning like how to play, the simplest songs and where you got to put your fingers and all that kind of stuff, I wanted to do more than that. So I would try to like listen to songs and play along with them. And I couldn't really do it in the beginning. I didn't have
Mhm.
that skill, but I was always trying to do that. I was always trying to hear things and hear something, play it, hear something, play it, and just try to fool around and improvise. From the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing, but I
Right.
was trying to do what I was going to be doing.
Right. Did you, during this time, were you also learning how to read music, or you was just really just playing by ear?
Well, with what I was just talking about, that was mostly by ear. But in school, I did play in the band, and they always had music for us. Um, so I did know how to read a certain amount. There were certain things that mystified me, like reading rhythms when I was in elementary school. I had a little bit of a tough time with that, and
Mhm.
I never had my own teacher to have private lessons until I could pay for it myself. So, you know, it was kind of frustrating, when you just need someone to guide you and
Mhm.
explain something. And when you're in a band, the band director doesn't have enough time to get to each student and
Right.
help them with their problem.
How did you
The-
overcome that? How did you overcome those struggles?
well, when I started, being able to pay for lessons myself, I studied really hard, and I just, picked everything apart. And, I had a couple of teachers in school and college that helped me a lot, that really broke down things. It's, it's a lifelong journey of learning.
Mhm.
It really is, especially when you're a music creator, when you write and when you improvise, you're always making things up.
When you start to get older in this field, some people say singing is a hobby. Some people say music is a hobby. Were you ever, have you ever gotten with counselors or individuals say, why are you doing this? That they don't consider what you do at that time employment. Like what are side tracks? Because you get real, when you hear most people say, I want to be a musician and a singer and movie stars, those are almost like in society's mind, untamable. There's no way you can do this. Were you ever told go somewhere else and do something else?
I don't know, but if I was, I just ignored it.
I like the way you thought about it for a minute. Like, did they ever tell me?
Some people have an opinion if they don't know you and they
Right.
don't know exactly what you do. They might form an opinion about you and what you do, but chances are they don't really exactly understand it or know what it is that you do.
How important was the dream to be a musician for you?
Well, it was all that I was going to do. It makes it easier if you start to become a little bit successful. Um, and luckily, in the past couple of years, I have.
Mhm.
But I would keep doing what I'm doing regardless.
You said successful in the last couple of years. How difficult was the journey for you prior to being successful? Like a lot of people would never know. Take the viewers in the mindset of a woman, saxophonist, flutist, vocalist, trying to enter into the world of musical entertainment. I saw movies like The Temptations. We see movies like the OJs, and we see the struggle with trying to get the contracts with Motown and so forth. What was that journey like for you? Because you just said it's sweeter now that you're getting success.
Well, if you start to get some success, things just get a little bit easier. After I got my first number one on Billboard, which was "Can You Feel It" in 2020, then some promoters, would call me and say, "Wow, you're on the radio all the time. I figured I'd better give you a call." So it's just, if you're more out there, you're in people's minds, you're in people's face. They
Mhm.
think about you. Oh yeah, what about her? What about putting her in the show? That'll work nice, or whatever. So there is just more of an opportunity, the more you get out there and the more you're on people's minds.
What was your first major break that you said, "Wow, this is what we've been waiting on. This is what I've been waiting on."
I think you have a certain amount of those in your life. One of them that I'm thinking about right now, um, was when I got signed on Kalimba, which was Maurice White's label from Earth, Wind, and Fire. So we were shopping my fourth release, Ear Candy. Uh, it was finished, and we were shopping it to some record labels. And, so I had recorded and released 3 albums prior.
Mhm.
So I had already written a fair amount of music, and had gotten airplay on it. Um, but as musicians, a lot of times you feel like your music is just going out into a black hole in space, and like,
Mhm.
I don't know, is anybody listening to this? Is like, anybody listening? Am I just working and working and working and grinding here? And is anybody listening?
Right.
What's happening? Because there's so much that's intangible with music, right?
Mhm.
So anyway, my husband called over there as my producer, because up to that point he had produced most of my music. Can You Feel It is where I branched out and used like 6 or 7 different producers. But so anyway, he called over at Kalimba and said that we had this project finished, and whoever answered the phone said, "I'll tell A&R, if anybody here's interested, they'll call you back." Click. So he said, "Forget it. Don't." They're not interested. So the next morning at like 10 o'clock in the morning, the phone rings, and Kalimba's in California, so it was 7 a.m. California time, and it's the A&R person from Kalimba,
Mm.
and he asked for my husband, and my husband answered the phone. He said yes, and the guy from Kalimba told him who he was, and he said, "Listen, I love Paula's music. Can you FedEx me over a copy?"
Wow.
It's like, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 I
What do
can
you
do
yeah.
that. So he hangs up the phone. I'm like, what just happened? He said, the A&R guy from Columbus says he loves your music, and wants to hear the project. Just like that.
Was the project completed?
Yeah.
Wow. So now you're working with uh Earth, Wind, and Fire pretty much.
No, I mean, that I had one project that was released in 2015.
Mhm.
Maurice died the following year.
Wow.
So they didn't keep the label aspect of Kalimba going. Kalimba's a company, that has to do with Earth, Wind, and Fire's business, but they just didn't keep the label section of it
How do you
alive.
come up with I went through all of your music. I've been following your music because I'm a jazz person. How do you come up with your ideas, your inspiration? Because some of your music, most of the time when you hear a jazz artist, we talked about this yesterday or day before. When you hear Kenny G, you know Kenny G.
Yeah.
You hear Stanley Clark, you know Stanley Clark. Everybody has that genre about their music. Yours is a little bit of everything. You hear a little bit of all kind of things in your music. Why do you do that? Just out of curiosity.
Well, it's all up in here, right? All
Mhm.
kinds of music that I've heard that I like. Like I said, I like a lot of different kinds of music. So you're going to hear. influences of all the different types of music that I like when I write.
One in particular, I like the remake of the Lowrider.
That was really fun. That was really fun. My
What?
friend Skylar Deal, I called him up and I said, I'm thinking about doing a cover of Low Rider. I think that'd be really cool. So we talked about it for a little bit, and then a few days later, he calls me up and he goes, "I got the track." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I got it." So he sends me over the track, and he had the whole track like laid out, and
Right.
we decided that when I do it live, I do the voiceover, but he did it in the studio, and he had Dave DeLone play keyboards on it. Dave was on the Tonight Show
Uh-huh.
for a while in the band, and yeah, that's a fun song to do live because a lot of people remember the song or have heard the song,
Yeah.
but when you put a different twist on it like that, they're like, "Oh."
Yeah. I was like, man, that's kind of different.
Yeah.
Notice you have a lot of vocals as well. How do you pick the right artist to come in on the vocal aspect? And then what's the reason that you would take the vocal part of one of your songs and then flip it and just do the instrumentals?
Well, certain stations will only play a certain number of vocals per hour.
Hmm.
There's always like a lot more instrumentals that get played.
Hmm.
So, a lot of times I'll do a vocal and an instrumental version of the same song.
Now we're gonna do a trivia. I told you I had something planned for you. We're gonna do trivia. We're gonna start with 2001. Let Me Inside. Remember that?
Yeah.
First album.
Mhm.
What was going through your mind when you made that album?
Well, honestly, it wasn't really meant to be an album. It was just a bunch of things I had recorded.
Hmm.
Um, I really feel like my journey started with Groove with Me, but so Let Me Inside Your Love, like I said, it was just a collection of things. There was no like thread going through it, like some of my other releases. Like with Ear Candy, that was inspired by Philly soul music.
Hmm.
Um, and some of the other releases I had, had a thread going through it. Let Me Inside Your Love was just like, well, we recorded enough music. Let's slap it together and put it up. And I didn't have any money. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to promote it. I didn't know anything. You know, I learned a lot of stuff over the past years from doing things and making mistakes.
What were you thinking when you did Fireflies and Silk Pajamas on that album?
Well, I was in the house practicing my soprano, which I don't bring on the road a lot because I can't bring it on the plane. With
Right.
I bring a little suitcase and my alto, and in the suitcase is my flute, my purse, my wireless mics, and my iPad. That's all I could bring. But anyway, I was practicing my soprano, and I went outside in the backyard for a minute. And I was just looking outside, and there were these fireflies flying around. And I went, "Oh, yeah, that's a good name."
That's how the song came about.
Yeah.
And how do you come up with the beat for that? Because I mean, that's a nice track. I like that.
Yeah, actually, I think I was thinking soprano on it, but I wound up recording it on alto. Um, I don't know. You like the melody kind of shows you where to go,
Hmm.
and I wanted it to have like a funky kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
So um, sometimes you experiment. When you're writing something and recording, you're doing it for the first time, right?
Right.
So you don't really know.
Let's go to
You know,
the next year. Let's go to 2009. Groove with Me. I like three songs off of that. Fallen, the vocal, Funk It Up, and There Ain't Nothing. I love the bass in there. Love the bass. Love the vocals. is this a different phase from the first album? And what was the phase into this one right here?
Yeah, I found my niche. I found where I should go with my writing, and it started to click for me and make sense. Uh, my writing had this like kind of old school R&B kind
Mhm.
of feel to it, and it just it that album showed me where to go. That's kind of where I figured it out.
How much impact was your husband in this album right here? Because you can see from this album to this one, I see, I saw, I felt growth in this, or what we might call a blossom into this.
Whoa,
It was
I like that.
it was totally different from the first album. So I saw growth. I saw experimenting with new things in this album. Could I be right on that?
Yeah, well, I certainly hope I grew, and I aim to grow all the time. That's, when you're an improvising musician and a songwriter, you got to keep growing. Nobody wants you to make the same recording over and over again. Nobody wants to hear that. So i- you have to keep growing and changing. So yeah, yeah, that Groove with Me was a big step for me. I was able to finance the recording at that point. I had special guests on there. I had Greg Adams from Tower Power on two cuts,
Hmm.
so that was really fun. Chieli Minucci from Special Effects was on Block Party, and I had, I think, a total of about 21 musicians on that recording, and there's pictures of them on the jacket.
Didn't think I was gonna go back this far, huh? Let's go to the next one.
Okay.
2012. And this was Enjoy the Ride.
Yeah.
Look, you're smiling. Tell me about this album. What was special about it?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people really like that recording. I'm not saying that I don't. I'm just saying, like, that I basically wrote just about everything myself.
Really?
And I like collaborating, but uh, nobody was available for me to collaborate with. So I wound up writing. I'm not looking at all the song titles, but I know I wrote the majority of it myself.
Can't get you out of my mind.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that?
Um, Sometimes, when you're writing, there's not an actual story. There's a story that you make up in your
Okay.
mind.
Okay.
You have to have a good imagination. So that's that's kind of what happened with that. But my husband Lou produced that, and I just love the textures that are in that recording. The sound he used on guitar. I don't know. There's something about that song that still kind of like grabs me. Um, I didn't know it was going to sound like that when it was done.
Right.
You first start. Sometimes it's like, I think I have something, and you play it for somebody else, and you say, like, do I have something, or is
Right.
this nothing? You know,
How
because
much how much impact was your husband involved in this particular album? Because there's a lot of feeling in here in this particular album. A lot different than the other two. This is, I could be wrong. It's your album. It's your thoughts. It's your music. Was he involved in this creation more?
not writing. He's written more on any other release than that one, but
Hmm.
he did produce it. He did produce it, and he said, your songwriting was so good on this one, I didn't have to do anything. I was like, okay.
Let's let's go. Let's go to one of my favorite albums, 2015. And you mentioned this several times through the episode.
Yeah.
Eye Candy.
Ear ear candy.
Ear candy. Yeah,
Oh,
ear candy. What's
eye
what's
candy
what's
smells.
what's why this name, and two songs in particular, with you, without you, and between you and me. I love Between Me, You and Me. I love the bass. Period.
Yeah, that's a cool bass line. Yeah.
Cool bass line.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Where did the name come from?
Between You and Me,
No, the actual album cover.
Ear Candy. That refers to I don't know if it's a studio or musical term. It refers to something that sounds good.
Hmm.
Like eye candy, like you said before, that refers to something that looks good. Ear candy is something that sounds good.
Out of the four so far, what have you learned from this one compared to the other three? I'm taking you down a journey of your beautiful music. What did we get from the other three that we bring into this album?
I wanted to work with my friend Cindy Bradley more. So
Yeah. She's awesome.
yeah. So I called her and she played on Between You and Me.
That's enough
That's
to
her.
be that's enough to be a number one seller right there.
Yeah. That and that's really fun. We did some shows together in the past couple of years as the Fabulous Blondes, and we played that. It's always great fun playing with her.
How is it playing with her? Just out of curiosity. She is legend, just like yourself, but two blondes. I mean, that had to be the tour of the century.
Um, we think a lot alike, so
When you
and we're
think
really
a
good.
lot alike, give me an example of what's think a lot alike. Give me an example.
When you're just speaking to someone and you just see eye to eye on a lot of issues.
Hmm.
Um, we're we're on the same page on a lot of issues, just about life and things like that. So when we get together, we just have a lot of fun.
What did you take away from her of your encounter with her to today? What did you learn from her? And what did you find out that you were probably lacking that she brought to your attention? And we can't speak on what you might have brought to her, but what did she bring to you that you felt elevated you to another level?
Well,
Did I put you
on
on the spot?
no, no, no.
Okay.
Uh, on the songs that she played on when we were like trading at the end, you
Hmm.
could see how much we're like in tune with each other. Uh, by the way, we're like trading. We listen to each other and we just have a chemistry, is what I'm trying to say. We have a musical chemistry together. And she's a real friend of mine. In this business, you meet a lot of people
Hmm.
and you have a lot of friends that are maybe more associates, but maybe you know how it is.
Hmm.
You know a lot of people, but you can count your friends on one hand usually.
You need to say that again because I say that all the time.
People listen to Andre when he says it's true. I mean, listen, I play all over. I play all over the world, and you know, sometimes work with regional musicians. I meet a lot. I meet a lot of people. I get to meet a lot of people. Um,
But you can count your friends on one hand.
you could count your friends on one hand just because you know a lot of people. You know, we're talking about you have a problem at 3 or 4 in the morning. Can you pick up the phone and call this person? That's your friend.
2018. Shake It. Take the viewers down that album. This is
uh,
definitely you coming out. Whole new you, whole new vibe, recreating, finding that niche, and putting it all together in these baskets. Evolving Phoenix. I could be wrong. I'm gonna let you tell the viewers.
no, and I love to hear your take on my music and what you're perceiving from it. Um, that's always really interesting to me. On Shake It, my friend Nick Colleone, my good friend Nick Colleone, wrote a song for me. He wrote one for Enjoy the Ride as well, which
Mhm.
was Sassy Strut. And I think that was one of my first tunes to chart on Billboard. And it got up to 15. It was on the chart for a long time.
Mhm.
But this song he wrote for Shake It was called My Song for You. And it's got almost 4 million streams on Spotify now.
I told you it was something about that.
Yeah, the people that love that song love that song. They just love that song. And I love it too because it reminds me of Nick, and I miss him.
Let's go to 2020. Can You Feel It? My favorite summer song with Nathan Mitchell.
Yeah.
A different
Well,
you, a different you. Um, experimenting with more vocals with the combination of different instruments, different melodies, different ballads, warm, soothing to the ear, but it makes you wonder. You tell me.
well, Can You Feel It was a great release for me. Can You Feel It was the first single that came out in January 2020. And as I mentioned before, wound up being my first number one on Billboard. Um, we were going to release, let me just think of how this went. I think Just Can't Stop was my second single. And it was gonna be Summer Song. I think we switched them. They
Mhm.
both wound up getting released in any case, and Summer Song came out in 2021. So Nathan Mitchell had called me and he said, "I want to produce a song for you." I said, "Okay." He said, "I want you to write a melody, and I want to take the melody and make a track around it." Now, every producer has their own way of working.
Right,
There's no one way to do anything.
right.
Some producers come up with like a backing track of the bed that the melody's going to be on and whatnot, and you write the melody over it. Sometimes it's a co-write. There's all different ways. So I thought that was kind of interesting that he asked me to do that, because I'd never done that before. So I literally recorded the melody that I wrote with a click and sent it to him, and he wrote the track around it.
How did that make you feel?
Well, when I heard where he went with it, great, because I loved what he did.
Mhm.
And that wound up being my second number one.
Speaking of number ones, before we wrap up, what's 2023 and 2024 has in store for you?
What is so just 2024? What does it have in store for me, or do you mean what
What's
uh
next on your list? You got
what's
tons of music coming out, tons of ideas. What is the wrapping up of 2023, going
okay?
into 2024? What should we look out for from you?
My seventh album that's not been named yet.
Look, they have no idea what goes on behind the scenes. I think I already named it, but I won't say it.
It's, I don't know. Naming an album, it's hard. Naming an instrumental song, really hard. You know, you might just be calling a song, scrambled eggs or whatever forever until you finally come up with a title. I mean, a vocal tune, that's easy to name, right? Because it has a chorus, and yeah, you listen to it and you're like, oh, is the song called blah blah blah? An instrumental song, how would you know what it's called? So that's always difficult. But my seventh album is going to come out very soon. It's finished. Working on the jacket and all that type of stuff, but the recording is done.
Are you satisfied with it?
Yeah, it actually has 4 singles on it. It has, Dancing Shoes is on it, Open Road is on it, It has four previously released singles and seven other songs that no one's heard.
Wow. How
So
can
there's
the
11.
viewers, how can the viewers get in contact with you and get your music and find out where you're going to be performing and so forth?
They can follow me on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Patherton1, Instagram, Paula Atherton Music. They could find my music anywhere they get music, Amazon, Apple Music,
You're
any place.
everywhere. You're
Yeah,
everywhere.
try.
Before we wrap up, Paula, do me a favor. And this is only for very, very special guests in my life. And you are definitely one. I love your music. You bring joy to every time I listen to one of those soundtracks. I'm looking forward to getting your new soundtrack. Um, leave the viewers, close my show out. Leave the viewers with something that only you can, and close the Andre the Beast Crayton show out.
Okay. Well, if I had one thing to say to everybody, what you just said about my music bringing you joy, that's why I do it. So, if I've achieved that, if I, play music for you at a show and you enjoy it, makes you happy, that's, I mean, I do it for the love of it because I love it. And just the whole thing that I could play it for people and bring them happiness. I mean, I have the best job in the world. So thank you for listening to my music, and if you enjoy it, it brings you happiness. That's, to me, that's everything.
Now, close out the Andre the Beast Crayton show like only you can.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I had a great interview with Andre, and I hope you enjoyed it too. And I hope to see everybody on the road in 2024.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.